Welcome to New World Now, where host Kim Corbin has compelling conversations with authors published by New World Library. They will discuss their personal journeys and share practical tools we can use to be more aware, mindful, and present in our daily lives. Now, here's your host, Kim Corbin.
On one hand, 'tis the season to be merry and shop and decorate and spend quality time with our family and friends. On the other hand, with the short days and the cold, dark nights, it's a time when we're naturally drawn inward for reflection and rest. So how do we balance these two seemingly opposing forces? That's where my guest today, internationally recognized life balance coach Rennee Trudeau, comes in. Rennee is a tireless advocate for the importance of having a comprehensive self-care practice in today's world, and she's here to offer us permission and practical advice that will empower us to get the rest and rejuvenation we need this holiday season. As the author of 3 life balance titles, including Nurturing the Soul of Your Family, 10 Ways to Reconnect and Find Peace in Everyday Life, which is published by New World Library, Rennee is a treasure trove of practical wisdom, and it's a joy to have her here with me today. So welcome, Rennee, and thanks for being here.
Thanks, Kim. I'm thrilled to be with you.
A central theme throughout your work is the idea of living from the inside out. So before we dive into some of your advice surrounding the holidays, specifically, I'd love for you to explain what you mean by living from the inside out.
Well, my personal experience of living from the inside out is really having the courage to pause a lot and to move with intention, and to be as present as I can, which is hard. I mean, I think we're all trying to do that. But rather than just responding to everything that's coming at me, just having the willingness and the courage to slow down and be present with what I'm feeling and moving a little slower.
Not being quite as reactive.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And how would you define self-care, and why do you feel it's so important?
Yeah, so I could talk for days and days about self-care, and I do at a lot of our retreats, but self-care for me is really, it's the art and science, Kim, of really attuning and responding to our needs and desires moment to moment. So not so much something to put on your to-do list, or it's not about, becoming a self-improvement project or being you 2.0, but really meeting yourself where you are and checking in and pausing and responding, putting your hand over your heart and asking, what do I need right now? And then having the willingness to give yourself that.
And in Nurturing the Soul of Your Family, I love the perspective you offer as self-care as a spiritual practice or way of connecting with the divine. Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Well, I've been teaching, learning, studying, practicing, living this self-care, this idea of self-care for over 18 years. And I say I still have a long way to go. But what I've learned is that it's not something that you just arrive at and you get. It's self-care as a practice is really as deep and wide as the ocean. So as I go through various life stages, and now I'm in midlife and moving beyond, I keep returning to it as my deepest, really spiritual teacher. So when I practice self-care, which is really honoring really my deepest essence, honoring my soul, it's a way in which I feel profoundly connected to the divine, to my essence, to that which I came from.
Yeah. And will you talk a little bit about this kind of push-pull that I think a lot of us are feeling in the winter season between our natural rhythms and the hustle and bustle of the holidays?
Yeah, absolutely. And I love to tune into the rhythms. I just hosted a full moon meditation on Sunday night that I do every full moon, and we all walked outside under that big, beautiful supermoon. And I'm preparing to lead a retreat on the winter solstice. So I find it very comforting and kind of humanizing and grounding to connect to nature's rhythms. So I'm always paying attention to when the full moon is and the new moon and the winter solstice. So yes, we're all feeling that pull right now. This winter, winter solstice is December 21st. It's the longest night of the year. And symbolically and in many traditions, and we feel it in our bodies, is this deep calling to go inward and to honor the light, but also honor the shadow. and really we've had a lot of shadow this year. So really looking at what are the gifts that have come from that, as well as the gifts that have come from the light.
Yeah. Oh, go ahead.
And I was going to say, like, as I think about, this time that we're in, and I think about, our conversation today and where we are. So I speak for a living, Kim, and I'm constantly traveling and in circles and in large groups with men and women. And what I'm noticing right now, so with this push and pull, is going into this holiday season, I think is different than any other we've ever experienced. We've had this really hard year. Most of us, for a good part of the year, have been walking around with this kind of low-grade anxiety, and we don't even know it. And we're exhausted. And so there's a lot of internal movement that's happening. It's kind of like a snow globe, like you shake up a snow globe and you see all the little, snowflakes moving around the snowman. And that's what most of us are feeling internally. So I think this holiday is going to be an opportunity for the snow globe to maybe settle and to see where we are going to land, internally and externally.
Yeah, and I think it's so important to presence that, because in any normal year, this can be a stressful time, and it really has been quite a year so far.
It has been, and so I think we need to give ourselves, like, as we enter this conversation, just permission to approach these holidays, not business as usual, but really going deep into what we need and how do we intentionally want to experience this really special time of year.
Yes. Yeah, I really love that. And I spent a lot of time on your blog in preparation for this interview. There's so much great stuff there. I really recommend that people check it out at renneetrudeau.com/blog. And one of the what inspired me to create this theme for our podcast was a blog post that's called 5 Ways to Support Rest and Renewal This Holiday. And I thought it would be fun for us to go through your suggestions one by one, just as tips that our listeners can apply to help them really sink into this holiday season. So your first tip is that we should schedule downtime.
Yeah. So, I think about entering this time and how many of us are already exhausted. We haven't had time to integrate, everything that's happened this year. And what's so interesting, too, is when we begin to slow down, what we often notice is there's this huge rush of everything that we've been experiencing over the past year, and it's been bottled up. It's kind of like if you've ever been to a retreat or sat in a circle, and there's that deep, deep, exhale on a physical level, but also a metaphoric level. And so we're about to enter this exhale, and we really need time to integrate what we've experienced this year. So I think rest would be, for all of us, no matter what your holiday season looks like, I think building in more time for deep rest, not just little windows, but really deep rest. And part of that is doing less, which we're going to talk about in a minute, and really pausing a lot before you say no to a commitment.
Yeah. And also in nurturing the soul of the family, one of the things I really appreciated was your suggestion of taking media fasts, not just during the holidays, but all throughout the year. So can you talk a little bit about how someone might give a media fast a try?
Yeah. And I'm happy to share a resource on how to do a digital detox. I'm a big fan of unplugging, and I hang out with a lot of neuroscientists, and I'm a meditation and yoga teacher as well. And there's so much benefit that comes from unplugging. It kind of like the cork comes off the genie bottle in terms of our creativity and our problem solving and our ability to connect to our wise self, that deepest part of ourselves. And so I do regularly schedule digital detoxes and media fasts. And sometimes I do them spontaneously, but at a minimum, every 90 days, I take an entire day to unplug and step back with just my journal and pen and sit quietly and ask what is uniquely mine to do. And in a family environment, we just went to the Frio River for Thanksgiving, and my almost 16-year-old, he about killed me, but I'm like, we're going to do a digital detox, And I talked to him a little bit about the neuroscience, because that kind of hooks him. And we took away his smartphone. He relinquished it for 3 days. And I could really see huge shifts in him and huge shifts in us and our ability to be more playful and more heartfelt and more present with each other.
Yeah, it's so important. And it's becoming, it seems, as we're more dependent on them, more challenging to do. And I think it's great also to have it be a pre-planned thing. It seems like a lot of people just get fed up and reach their boiling point and are like, I'm leaving Facebook.
Right. Oh, yeah. Yeah, even Fridays, like Friday. So I'm an entrepreneur and I have my own businesses, but like Friday, and you could even do this no matter what your work environment in some capacity. But Fridays, I really look at as days of creativity and renewal. So I may be doing work, but it's more, belly time, physically meeting with people, visioning, big picture strategizing or planning, but not that computer, intense kind of cerebral mental thing that happens when we spend a lot of time plugged in.
Yeah. Yeah. That's great advice. Okay. So the second tip that you offer is to just say no this holiday season.
Yes. So we have a really popular list in Nurturing the Soul of the Family called 9 Ways to Say No. And, I had to learn this skill. I didn't start learning it until my late 30s. I'm now in my early 50s, and it can still be challenging for me. But it is so freeing and liberating when you cultivate the ability to say no. So as we think about the holidays and we think about, historically, what gets us in hot water with the holidays are expectations. So unrealistic expectations or expectations of the Norman, Rockwell Christmas, just all of these things really can throw us into contrast or discomfort, our unrealistic expectations, and then overdoing, what I call, my friend Margaret calls us hopos, helping other people out. So I love to help other people out. I love to say yes to volunteer things, but then we get into overdoing and we're exhausted and we're grumpy and it's no good. So saying no is really important this time of year. And what I recommend is just, you get a request, just put a hand over the center of your chest, maybe close your eyes for a moment and just reflect, is this a yes or a no, or maybe next year? No.
Yeah. And also I think it's important to be able to receive other people's no with grace.
Yeah. And you can, we can model that for one another. And it's very freeing when people are able to do that. And if it's really scary for you to say no, you can even just start with let me think about it. If it's a big thing, I'm the oldest of 6 children, Kim, and it looks like our holiday is going to take an interesting turn in terms of what we're going to do. People have very different visions. And I'm just pausing with it right now and going inward and getting really clear about what I want my Christmas and holiday season to most honor and most be about, and then come from that space.
Right. Going back to your own values.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Your next tip is to ask for help.
Yeah. So again, getting back to where we are, that most of us have, I think all of us, I heard somebody say the other day, gosh, I'm dealing with so much anxiety from this year. Well, I think we're all dealing with anxiety. I think everybody has on some level, felt anxious. So I think in terms of asking for help, starting by just meeting yourself where you are. Can you just meet yourself exactly where you are and not try to be happier or perkier or wiser or have it together, but just really meet yourself exactly where you are. And so part of that in coming to that is allowing yourself to ask for help. I have a neighbor that has a very big vision for her holiday, and she just had back surgery. So I've been challenging her every day to text me, because I'm working from home sometimes, and just saying, can you come over and lift this box for me? Can you come over and when you go to the grocery store, pick up this one thing for me? Ask for help can look very practical. I'm doing something for my son's school, and somebody sent this note about us baking these extravagant things for the teachers. And I'm like, I'm so glad we're doing this appreciation party, but I'm going to be bringing pies from the local bakery. I'm not going to be baking. So asking for help, giving ourselves permission to practice good is good enough, and really meeting ourselves where we are.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of good is good is enough. Good is good is good is good enough.
Amen. Yes.
And the asking for help tip also reminds me of something from Nurturing the Soul of Your Family, which is the idea of the importance of building our tribe.
Yeah.
Talk about that a little bit.
Yeah. So I think about, I grew up as oldest of 6 children, grew up in this really independent family. And there were a lot of beautiful gifts that came from that, where we were taught from a very young age to be hyper independent and to figure things out. And I was in the kitchen whipping up dinners for my parents when I was like 7 years old, and that's beautiful. But I entered into a whole other way of being when I began to surround myself with really a lot of beautiful women that were modeling for me what it looked like to embrace sisterhood and to have this larger circle of support. And I'm not talking about necessarily hiring anybody, but whether it be neighbors or mentors or, friends who are at a similar life stage, but really allowing yourself to sink into that beautiful feeling of being interconnected, relaxing into that experience of it's okay for us to need each other. And it's actually quite powerful to feel vulnerable and to reach out for help.
Yeah, and I really feel like community is becoming increasingly important as the world becomes, just having that close people around us.
Yeah, I would say that's one of the gifts. I wrote a blog post about the gifts from this year. They've been really trying, but there have been a lot of gifts. And that is definitely one of the gifts that I've seen is people that were more likely to go solo or not show up to group things are really wanting to come together and to tap into our collective spirit of experience. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. The next tip is my favorite as someone who suffers from what you call in your book, busy bee syndrome. I'm like, I'm
with you, girlfriend. I am my husband laughs at me all the time because he goes, it's just so funny to think of what you think you can accomplish in an hour. It's insane.
So this next is music to my ears and not easy for me to do, but it's do less and experience more.
Yeah. So it's funny, I love to live with intention. I love to live with a sense of purpose. And I do pause a lot and I reflect a lot. And everything I'm talking about, I do. And I go inward, what is mine to do today? How can I best serve today? I ask that in my morning meditation. But what I have discovered is that when I do less, Kim, I'm happier. I mean, all of that overdoing and helping and trying to fit one more thing in or 10 more emails makes me really grumpy, because what happens and the reason this is happening is we're pulled out of the present moment. So when we're overdoing, we're living in the future or we're living in the past, which we know is anxiety inducing. But if we're here in the moment and we're just breathing and we're just breathing and we're just breathing, we feel good. So when things are simpler and we have less choices and we do less, we feel happier. So doing less can be, for the holiday season, pausing, reflecting, what would really nourish me this holiday. So December 2017, it's different than any other year. What would most nourish me? And then giving yourself permission to do less. And even if that sounds crazy and different, like I told my siblings, I'm like, we usually do these elaborate food things. And I want to cook a big pot of tortilla soup and do some caroling with my neighbors and then go help our refugee family that we've adopted. And that's about it. And they think I'm crazy. So we'll see how this all works out. But I mean, that's what feels right to me in my heart this year, Yeah.
Yeah. Taking the time.
Yeah. And willing. And I would say again, with this year, being willing to do it different. To do it different than you've ever done it before, because this year has been like none other.
Oh, I love that. That's another good thing, right? In a way, is realizing the world is not what it once was, and so we are invited to show up differently as well.
Absolutely, yeah, and giving,
yeah. So your last tip is to unplug and spend time in nature.
Yes, and so it's almost impossible right now if you pick up any magazine or you pay attention to any kind of news that's out there. There is so much around on a neurobiological level and a scientific level, the healing properties of nature. And we don't even need that science to tell us that, right? I mean, when you feel off and you go for a hike or you go down on the greenbelt or you go and just be in nature next to water, water is so renewing and so replenishing. We feel different. I mean, we recalibrate. And I've been doing that with my son. I mean, when he was very little, I would take him down on the greenbelt after school, and now he's a sophomore in high school, and sometimes I just have to kidnap him and take him out to Big Bend National Park or take him somewhere. But we all become different people. We really return to our innate state of well-being. I think that's what I love most about nature. It reminds us that we're not out there grasping to try to become something different, but we're returning to our true essence, really that innate state of well-being.
Yes. And in Nurturing the Soul of Our Family, you share about a survey that you did where you asked people how they connect with the sacred in their everyday life. And nature was at the top of the list.
Yeah.
And I'm wondering what some of the other ways that people responded about connecting with the divine were.
Absolutely. Yeah. So I teach a lot about spiritual renewal and spirituality and leadership too. I've been doing a lot around that. And I love the research and hearing from people, but some of the things they've shared are being in nature. So prayer and meditation comes up high on the list. Service to others. So whether it's volunteering for an organization that you're passionate about. We work with Mobile Loaves and Fishes here in Austin, Texas, which serves the homeless. And that's very deep spiritual renewal for my son, since he was really young. Also, it could be, I'm going to a expressive arts workshop on Thursday night around the solstice. So I'm going to be painting, which for me, painting, dancing, the creative arts are huge ways that many of us connect to the divine or connect to the sacred in our everyday lives. And there's many more, but those are some of the top ones.
And I think whatever that is for us is a good thing to blend into this time through December as well.
Yeah. And gratitude. I mean, we think about, for those that do have families and are listening, people hear, oh gosh, we're always talking about gratitude. Well, there's a reason we're always talking about gratitude, and all the scientists are telling us that is actually going into gratitude, just having each person share at dinner 3 things that they're grateful for. That is the fastest way to shift our brain chemistry and move us into a state of well-being, is moving back into gratitude. So that's a powerful spiritual renewal practice as well.
And so simple.
So simple. Yeah.
Well, many of us are getting ready to spend the holidays with our families of origin, which can be stressful and triggering for many. And I love the perspective in Nurturing the Soul of Your Family that you offer about family life as being sacred and really a spiritual practice. So could you just talk a little bit more about that perspective of the people that we are in family with and what they're here to teach us?
Yeah. I think I would say the number one thing, so there's, being with our immediate family and our extended family, but I would say the number one thing before going into, kind of rather than just throwing yourself into the family environment or whatever it may be, is take a few moments or longer by yourself to get really grounded and to determine what you want to cultivate as your state of being. How do you want to be around your family? So, it can be even sitting in the car, just for a few minutes, closing your eyes, connecting with your breath, and envisioning yourself interacting with your loved ones, and knowing that everybody is in such a hyper-aroused, triggered, anxious state, particularly if they're plugged into the media all the time, which a lot of people are. So I would say getting really clear on your state of being and then staying very true to yourself about self-care. So I like to think of self-care. I've often asked women in my retreats, can you cultivate an unwavering allegiance to yourself? Can you not abandon yourself? So as you go into these family environments, can you stay true to yourself? Does that mean you need to, before you fly off the handle, go outside, walk around the block, go in the other room, do some deep breathing, bring out some aromatherapy. But just, I think, again, anchoring in what is your state of being? How do you want to be with your family?
I love that. Well, we have about 1 minute left, and I would just wondering if you have any kind of parting words of wisdom, of advice. That was great what you just offered, but kind of to wrap up the idea of giving ourselves permission to relax this holiday season.
Yeah. Okay. So here's 3 little pearls that I would say, and do this with the utmost compassion. My brother, we were laughing. He said, "You think you're enlightened? Go home for Thanksgiving." So the 3 pearls would be intentional, be sweet with yourself. What is it that you most need during the season? Release expectations. Know that everybody's showing up in a very, very different states and very different frames of mind. So releasing expectations and then doing less. And you will never regret doing less. You know, that would be my suggestion as you enter this time.
Oh, wonderful. And Rennee, thank you so much for the presence and the love and just the really practical, grounded advice that you bring to the world. I really appreciate it.
Oh, thank you, Kim. My joy.
For more information about Rennee Trudeau and nurturing the soul of your family, visit her online at renneetrudeau.com. That's RenneeTrudeau.com. That's also where you'll find her blog, which is full of practical wisdom for day-to-day living. I'd also like to invite you to join the New World Now podcast community on Facebook, where you can be a part of discussions about current episodes and stay up to date on the latest and greatest podcast news. Simply search for New World Now podcast on Facebook to join the group. I hope to see you there and look forward to connecting on future episodes of New World Now.
Thank you for listening to New World Now with Kim Corbin from New World Library. New World Library publishes books and audios that inspire and challenge us to improve the quality of our lives and our world. For more information about their books and authors, you can visit them online at newworldlibrary.com.